At my birthday dinner, my sister announced she was pregnant with my husband's child, expecting me to break down. "We're a family now," she smirked. I said nothing, lifted my glass, and shared a truth that hit hard, and in seconds, their entire world fell apart. You know that gut-wrenching feeling when your world just implodes? Mine shattered on my 30th birthday, courtesy of my own sister and my husband. They thought they had me cornered, delivering a pregnancy announcement that was meant to crush me. But what they didn't know, I had a secret of my own, one that would turn their twisted fantasy into their worst nightmare. Okay, so picture this. For as long as I can remember, my younger sister, Jessica, has had this thing. Whatever was mine, she wanted it. My toys as kids, my clothes as teenagers, even my spotlight at every single family gathering. She was the golden child, you know? Mom and Dad would gush over her crayon scribbles while my straight-A report cards got a simple, "And that's nice, Sam." It wasn't that they didn't love me, but with Jessica, it was just more. More visible. More enthusiastic. It built this wall of resentment in me that I desperately tried to ignore. Jessica developed this pattern. My favorite teddy bear would mysteriously end up in her room. A sweater I'd saved my allowance for would disappear from my closet and reappear on her. When I got the lead in the school play boom, Jessica suddenly had an interest in drama and got expensive acting classes. "Why can't you just share with your little sister?" became the family mantra, always pointed at me, never at her. So I learned to hold on to the things that truly mattered. To guard my heart and my dreams like a fortress. College? That was my escape. I moved 3 states away, far enough that Jessica couldn't follow. And for the first time, without her shadow, I bloomed. I made real friends, found my passion in marketing, and in my junior year, I met Kyle. He walked into my advanced marketing seminar, all tousled brown hair, and the most genuine smile you've ever seen. The first time we spoke, he dropped his coffee, stammering apologies as it splashed my notes. Instead of being annoyed, I thought it was endearing. He offered to buy me dinner to make up for it, and I said yes. That dinner turned into breakfast, then talking until the sun came up about our dreams, our families, our favorite books. "I've never met anyone who gets me like you do," he told me that night. And honestly, for once, I felt truly seen. Our relationship just flourished. Kyle was everything I'd dreamed of, attentive, kind, ambitious. We graduated, moved to Chicago, built our careers side by side. When he proposed on the shores of Lake Michigan at sunrise, after 2 years together, I really felt like I'd found my happily ever after. Then came the wedding planning. And with it, the inevitable return of Jessica into my life. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep by then, a job that seemed to involve more flirting than actual sales. When I called to tell her I was engaged, her response was lukewarm at best. "Well, I guess congratulations." "Is he rich?" Those were her first words. Not, "I'm happy for you." Not, "You deserve this." Just that. Despite my reservations, Mom insisted I ask Jessica to be my maid of honor. "It would break her heart if you didn't," she'd pleaded. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags. Jessica wore white to my bridal shower. At the rehearsal dinner, her toast was more about her than me. She openly flirted with Kyle's groomsmen at the reception. "Kyle, sweet Kyle, just squeezed my hand. She's just jealous because you're so incredible." And I believed him. I really did. The first 2 years of our marriage? Pure bliss. We bought a small house, advanced in our careers, started talking about a family. We agreed to wait until we were more financially established, though I always suspected Kyle had other, unstated reasons for hesitating. I respected it. Focused on us. Then, about a year ago, everything began to shift. Kyle started working later. His phone was always face down on the table. He became protective of his passwords, jumping if I came near while he was texting. The intimacy between us dwindled until we felt more like roommates than lovers. "It's just stress from the new promotion," he'd say. "Once this project is over, things will go back to normal." But they never did. The gap just widened. I started seeing things, you know? Checking his phone bill, noticing frequent calls to a number I didn't recognize. I'd smell an unfamiliar perfume on his shirts. Not mine. Not anything I owned. Once, I found a long blonde hair on his jacket. Jessica has long blonde hair. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my childhood insecurities were just poisoning my mind. After all, Jessica lived in the same city, but we barely saw her outside of family gatherings. Why would Kyle be involved with her? My 30th birthday approached, and I hoped it would be a turning point. Kyle had been especially distant, but he promised to make it special. My parents offered to organize a family dinner at Merlot, my favorite restaurant. I spent extra time getting ready that night. I wore the blue dress Kyle once said brought out my eyes, styled my hair just how he liked it. I was determined to reconnect, to find our way back. Looking in the mirror before we left, I whispered to myself, tonight will be different. Tonight will be a new beginning. I had no idea how truly prophetic those words would be. Just not in the way I'd hoped. Merlot. The warm amber lighting, the exposed brick, the scent of fresh bread and rosemary. It always felt like home. Kyle had texted he'd meet me there, a last-minute work call. My parents were already there, Mom with her contained smile, Dad with his awkward pat. You look nice, Samantha, Mom said, that you might want to touch up your lipstick before the photos. Typical. I hadn't even sat down, and she was already finding something to improve about me. Jessica wasn't there yet, of course. She'd elevated tardiness to an art form, making sure all eyes would be on her when she made her grand entrance. I asked for water, still wanting to share that first toast with Kyle. My parents exchanged glances. Go ahead and have some wine, dear. It's your birthday. Then, a commotion at the entrance. Jessica, laughing, tossing her blonde hair, wearing a tight red dress that left little to the imagination. And who was with her? Kyle. My Kyle, holding the door, his hand briefly touching the small of her back as they navigated the tables. They were walking too close, smiling too intimately, too familiar. Sorry we're late, Jessica announced, leaning down to kiss my cheek. I ran into Kyle in the parking lot. Lucky coincidence, right? Kyle avoided my eyes as he sat beside me. Happy birthday, Sam. Sorry about the delay. He smelled freshly showered. His usual cologne, stronger than normal. That work call excuse? It suddenly felt paper-thin. No problem, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm just glad everyone's here now. Dinner was a blur of my parents' cruise stories and Jessica's sales triumphs. Kyle was unusually quiet. Under the table, I placed my hand on his knee, needing that connection. He flinched, then covered my hand with his palm clammy. Everything okay? I whispered. Fine, he replied, too quickly. Just tired. The chocolate lava cake arrived, with a single candle. Dad raised his glass. Before we sing, I'd like to make a toast to my oldest daughter on her birthday. Samantha, you've always been so responsible, stable, not exciting, not impressive, just stable, like a reliable old horse. Actually, Jessica interrupted before we could even sing. She stood up, smoothing her dress over her stomach with deliberate emphasis. I have an announcement to make. I think it would be the perfect addition to Sam's birthday celebration. She paused for dramatic effect, her eyes gleaming with triumph as they locked with mine. I'm pregnant. Silence. My mother gasped in delight. My father's face split into a grin. That's wonderful, sweetheart. When are you due? How far along? About 10 weeks, Jessica replied, her hand still on her stomach. But there's more. And that's when she dropped the bomb that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. Kyle's the father, Jessica announced, her voice ringing with this twisted pride that made my blood run cold. We've been seeing each other for months. We're going to be a family now. The restaurant buzzed around us, but at our table, time just stopped. Dad's glass froze midair. Mom's smile collapsed, her eyes darting between Jessica, Kyle, and me, trying to process the unthinkable. Kyle just stared at the tablecloth, his face drained of color. This wasn't how we were going to tell you, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. We. I repeated, the single syllable somehow making it out through my constricted throat. Jessica reached across the table, placing her hand over Kyle's. We wanted to wait until after the first trimester, but I just couldn't hold it in anymore. Her eyes found mine again, gleaming with malicious triumph. We're a family now, Sam. Kyle and I are going to raise this baby together. The calculated cruelty of her timing on my birthday, in my favorite restaurant, in front of our parents, was breathtaking. This wasn't a slip of passion. This was a performance, designed for maximum damage. Mom found her voice first. I don't understand. Kyle is Samantha's husband. She stated it like a simple fact. Not for much longer, Jessica replied with a dismissive flick of her wrist. They've been having problems for ages. Kyle and I didn't plan this, but when real love happens, you can't fight it. Real love. As if what Kyle and I had built over 7 years was somehow counterfeit. Sam? Kyle finally looked at me, his expression a nauseating mix of guilt and relief. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this. Jessica and I, it just happened. Just happened. Like a rainstorm or a flat tire. Not a months-long betrayal requiring thousands of conscious decisions to lie, to deceive, to destroy. When? I asked, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. When did it just happen? Kyle shifted uncomfortably. Does it matter? It started at your Christmas party, Jessica interjected, clearly enjoying her role as narrator of my humiliation. Remember when Kyle and I both disappeared for a while? You thought he was helping me find my earring. She laughed, a tinkling sound that scraped against my nerves like broken glass. He found something, all right. 6 months. While I was planning romantic anniversary surprises and scheduling date nights to reconnect, my husband and sister had been carrying on behind my back. Every late night at work, every mysterious text message, every excuse, it all crystallized into a pattern of betrayal so obvious, I couldn't believe I'd missed it. I think, Dad replied slowly, setting down his wine glass with exaggerated care, that this is a conversation best continued in private. But Jessica wasn't finished. No need for privacy, Dad. We're all family here. She smiled, rubbing her still flat stomach. And soon there'll be one more Henderson joining us. Isn't that exciting? Your first grandchild. Mom, predictably, latched onto that detail like a lifeline. A grandchild, she breathed, her eyes softening as they always did for Jessica. Well, the circumstances are unusual, but a baby is always a blessing. I watched in disbelief as my mother began to mentally reframe this catastrophe as a joyous family development. Of course she would. Jessica had always been forgiven anything. Her transgressions transformed into triumphs through the alchemy of my parents' favoritism. Sam? Kyle touched my arm tentatively. Can we talk about this privately? I looked at his hand on my arm like it was a foreign object. This hand that had held mine through my grandmother's funeral. That had slid a wedding ring onto my finger with promises of forever. That had apparently been touching my sister with equal intimacy. I need to use the restroom, I announced, standing so abruptly my chair scraped loudly. No one tried to stop me. My legs, somehow, carried me despite feeling disconnected from my body. The restaurant bathroom was mercifully empty. I locked myself in a stall, pressed my forehead against the cool metal door, and waited for the breakdown that surely had to come. But the tears? They didn't. Instead, a strange calm descended. A clarity I hadn't expected. This betrayal, while devastating, wasn't actually surprising. Jessica had been taking what was mine our entire lives. Kyle had shown signs of his weakness for months. This was merely the culmination of patterns long established. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed different. Harder, perhaps, but also more focused. I reapplied my lipstick with steady hands. You will not break, I told my reflection. Not here. Not for them. When I returned to the table, they were discussing names. Baby names. As if this announcement had been met with universal joy rather than shattering my world. Kyle looked miserable, but resigned. Jessica rattled off options. If it's a boy, I'm thinking Kyle Jr., she was saying. Though, we could use Henderson as a first name. Henderson Parker has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Parker. My married name. She was already claiming it for her child. Or for a girl, maybe Kylie? Too on the nose. She laughed, touching Kyle's arm possessively. I slid back into my seat. All eyes turned to me, with varying degrees of concern, guilt, and in Jessica's case, barely concealed anticipation. She was waiting for my breakdown. For the scene that would cement her narrative of being the stable, sensible one, stepping in to care for poor Kyle after his emotional wreck of a wife fell apart. Instead, I smiled. "You've certainly given me a birthday to remember," I replied calmly. "But if you don't mind, I'd like to enjoy my cake before it melts completely." Jessica's smile faltered. Confusion clouded her features. This wasn't the reaction she had scripted. Kyle looked equally bewildered. "Sam," he began, "we should talk about arrangements." I held up my hand. "Not now, Kyle. Right now, I'm going to have my birthday cake." I picked up my fork and took a deliberate bite of the chocolate lava cake, closing my eyes briefly to savor the flavor. When I opened them, all four of them were staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "What?" I asked innocently. "Did you think I'd collapse? Make a scene? Run out crying? Sorry to disappoint you." Jessica recovered first. "We just thought you'd be more upset." "Oh, I assured her, taking another bite of cake. "But unlike some people at this table, I don't feel the need to make a spectacle of every emotion. Besides," I added, setting down my fork, "there's something you should know before we continue this discussion." The slight tremor in my hand was the only outward sign of the emotional earthquake happening inside me. I took a slow sip of water, gathering my thoughts. "I've known about the affair for 3 months," I replied quietly. Kyle's head jerked up, his eyes wide with shock. Jessica's triumphant smile utterly dissolved. "What?" Kyle stammered. "You really should change your email password more often, Kyle. Using our anniversary date wasn't exactly secure. Especially when you started acting so suspicious." My mother gasped. "Samantha, this is hardly appropriate dinner conversation." I turned to her with steel in my voice. "Neither is announcing an affair with your sister's husband at her birthday dinner, Mom. But here we are." Back in March, I'd borrowed Kyle's laptop when mine crashed before an important work presentation. An email notification had popped up. From Jessica. Subject line, "Last night." My finger hovered over the mouse. Principles of privacy warring with growing suspicion. In the end, suspicion won. The email had been explicit, detailing their encounter in Kyle's office after hours and referencing several previous meetings. My world had collapsed that day, but I'd kept the knowledge to myself. Needing time to process, to plan, to protect myself. After I found those emails, I continued. I hired a private investigator. Davis and Associates. They're very thorough, Kyle. They have photos of you entering Jessica's apartment building 27 different evenings. They have recordings of your phone conversations. They even have the receipt from that jewelry store where you bought her that bracelet she's wearing right now, the one she claimed was from her grateful client. Jessica instinctively covered the gold bracelet on her wrist, her confidence visibly cracking. "You've been investigating me?" Kyle's voice rose with indignation. "That's an invasion of privacy." I actually laughed. A genuine laugh, despite everything. That's rich coming from the man who invaded my marriage. But don't worry, the investigation was completely legal. Unlike adultery, which is still grounds for fault-based divorce in this state. My father shifted uncomfortably. "Samantha, perhaps we should." "I'm not finished," I cut him off. 2 months ago, I contacted Patricia Donovan. She's one of the best divorce attorneys in Chicago. The paperwork is already prepared, Kyle. I've documented everything, secured copies of all our financial records, and taken measures to protect my assets. Patricia advised me to wait until I had all my evidence in order before confronting you. Kyle's face had gone from shocked to pale to slightly green. Jessica looked between us, her triumph fading as she realized she wasn't delivering news. She was walking into a trap. "You've been planning to divorce me?" Kyle asked hoarsely. "All this time?" "Yes," I replied simply. "I was going to serve you the papers next week." Actually, Jessica's announcement just accelerated my timeline. My mother had tears in her eyes. "But Samantha, a divorce is so final. Surely with counseling." "Mom," I interrupted gently but firmly. "There's no coming back from this. And there is one more thing you should all know." I turned my gaze directly to Jessica. "Something that makes your announcement particularly interesting." I reached for my purse and pulled out a folded document I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. I'd never imagined that moment would come at my own birthday dinner. Kyle had a vasectomy 2 years ago, I replied, sliding the medical report across the table. We decided children weren't in our future. He didn't want the responsibility. Jessica stared at me, then at Kyle, comprehension slowly dawning on her face. That's not possible, she whispered. You're lying. Check the document, I replied. Sacred Heart Medical Center, Dr. Reynolds. The procedure was done 26 months ago. Kyle recovered on our couch watching March Madness. I remember, because I had to keep bringing him frozen peas for the swelling. Kyle looked like he might vomit. Sam, I can explain. Explain what? Jessica cut in, her voice rising. That you had a vasectomy and didn't tell me? That you let me believe. She stopped abruptly, realizing what she was revealing. My mother was examining the medical document with shaking hands. Is this true, Kyle? Kyle's silence was confirmation enough. I turned to Jessica, whose face had drained of all color. So, sister dear, if you're truly pregnant, congratulations are in order. Just not to Kyle. He's shooting blanks, as they say. So, who's the real father? Do you even know? The restaurant had grown quieter. Nearby diners, obviously, were aware that serious drama was unfolding at our table. Jessica's eyes darted around, noting the attention, her carefully constructed moment of triumph crumbling around her. This is a mistake, she insisted weakly. Those medical records must be wrong. They're not wrong, Kyle finally admitted, staring at his hands. I should have informed you, Jess. I didn't think it would matter. We were using protection anyway. Or supposed to be. I never thought. You never thought she'd try to trap you with a pregnancy that couldn't possibly be yours. I finished for him. Rookie mistake, Kyle. You should have realized Jessica always has an angle. Jessica suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly. I need some air, she muttered, grabbing her purse and practically running toward the exit. Kyle looked torn, glancing between me and Jessica's retreating form. Go ahead, I replied coldly. Follow her. You two deserve each other. After a moment's hesitation, Kyle rose and hurried after Jessica, leaving me alone with my shell-shocked parents. My father cleared his throat. Samantha, I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say, Dad. I picked up my fork again and took another bite of my cake. It tasted like ash now, but I was determined to finish it. This was my birthday dinner, after all. Except, perhaps, that Jessica might need a different kind of doctor now. One who can help her figure out who actually fathered her baby. My mother was silently crying, mascara trailing down her cheeks. How can you be so calm? This is a disaster. I set down my fork and looked her directly in the eyes. No, Mom. A disaster is something unexpected and unavoidable. This was predictable. And entirely preventable. Jessica has been taking what's mine since we were children, and you and Dad have been enabling her. The only difference is that this time, I was prepared. I signaled the waiter for the check. I think our celebration is over for tonight. The restaurant had grown uncomfortably quiet. I signed the check with steady hands, adding a generous tip for the waiter who'd had to witness this spectacle. As I finished, I saw Kyle returning alone, his face ashen. He slid back into his seat. Where's Jessica? Mom asked, dabbing at her eyes. She's in her car, Kyle replied. She's upset. I imagine finding out you're not the father of her convenient pregnancy would be upsetting, I replied, my voice deliberately neutral. Kyle looked at me with pleading eyes. Sam, please, can we talk privately? There's so much I need to explain. Is it true? My father's gruff voice cut through the tension. About the vasectomy? Kyle nodded reluctantly. Yes, sir. 2 years ago. Sam and I discussed it and decided. You decided, I corrected. You were the one who didn't want children. I was willing to wait. The point is, Kyle continued, it was a mutual decision in our marriage. I should have informed Jessica, but things between us were complicated and... Complicated? I laughed, without humor. That's certainly one word for sleeping with your wife's sister. My mother clutched her pearls, literally. I just don't understand how this happened. How could you both do this to Samantha? Before Kyle could answer, Jessica reappeared. her face blotchy from crying, but her composure somewhat restored. She slid into her chair, her arms wrapped protectively around her midsection. "I'm sorry for running out," she muttered. I needed a moment. The waiter approached cautiously. "Is everything all right with your meal? Would anyone like coffee or dessert?" "Just the check, please," I replied. "I've already signed it." "Wait," Jessica replied suddenly. "I want to explain." She looked around the table, her gaze landing on me. "Sam, what happened between Kyle and me? It wasn't planned. We never meant to hurt you. And yet you chose to announce it at my birthday dinner?" I pointed out. With such impeccable timing. Jessica had the grace to look ashamed. "That was wrong. I thought it would be easier with family around. I didn't think about how it would feel for you." "You never do," I replied quietly. "That's the problem, Jess. You've never once considered my feelings when taking something that belongs to me." "Kyle doesn't belong to you," she shot back, a flash of her usual defiance returning. "He's a person, not a possession." "He was my husband," I replied. "The man who promised to love and honor me. And you were my sister who should have respected that commitment, even if he didn't." My father cleared his throat. "About the baby, Jessica. If Kyle isn't the father." Jessica's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know what to say. The dates matched up. I really thought. "Who else could it be?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jessica stared at her lap. "There was someone else before Kyle. He's married too." My father groaned, burying his face in his hands. "Jessica, for God's sake." "I ended it when things got serious with Kyle," she insisted. "But the timing. I guess I miscalculated. I couldn't help myself." I laughed. The absurdity of the situation finally breaking through my carefully maintained composure. "So, let me get this straight. You were having an affair with a married man, then started sleeping with your sister's husband, got pregnant by the first married man, and tried to pass the baby off as my husband's." Put that way, even Jessica seemed to recognize the horrifying symmetry of her actions. "It wasn't like that," she said. "I really thought Kyle was the father." "Well, he's not," I replied definitively. "And now you have a decision to make about who to tell." Kyle, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "I think I have some decisions to make, too." He turned to Jessica. "You informed me I was the only one. That it had been months since you'd been with anyone else." Jessica reached for his hand. "Kyle, please. I made a mistake. But what we have is real." He pulled his hand away. "Is it? Or am I just another thing you took from your sister?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jessica recoiled as if she'd been slapped. My mother, ever the peacemaker, attempted to salvage the unsalvageable. "Perhaps we should all take some time to process this. It's been a shock for everyone." "That's an understatement," my father muttered. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. "I think that's wise. Kyle, I'll have my attorney contact you next week. In the meantime, I'd appreciate it if you'd stay somewhere else." Kyle looked up at me, desperation in his eyes. "Sam, please, can't we at least talk about this?" "We're way past talking," I replied, surprising myself with the finality in my voice. "You made your choice months ago. You just didn't have the courage to tell me to my face." I turned to my parents. "Thank you for the birthday dinner. It was certainly memorable." "Samantha, wait." Jessica called as I gathered my purse. "You can't just leave like this." I paused, looking at my sister. Really looking at her, behind the perfect makeup and designer clothes. I saw something I'd never noticed before. Insecurity. A deep, gnawing insecurity that had driven her to compete with me our entire lives. "I'm not leaving anything, Jess," I replied softly. "I'm walking away. There's a difference. I hope you figure out what you're going to do about your baby and its actual father. That's not my problem anymore." As I walked out of the restaurant, I felt strangely light. The betrayal still hurt, a wound that would take time to heal. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the weight of Jessica's shadow. I had finally stepped into the light, on my own terms. In the parking lot, I took a deep breath of the cool evening air. My phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. "Please come home. We need to talk." I deleted it without responding and drove away, leaving behind the wreckage of what had once been my life, heading towards something entirely new. The morning after that catastrophic birthday dinner, I woke up in a hotel room I'd checked into. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, but it was a sanctuary from the storm. My phone showed 27 missed calls and dozens of texts from Kyle, Jessica, my parents. I ignored them all and called Patricia Donovan instead. "It's time," I informed her. "I want to file the papers today." Patricia's voice was calm and professional. "I'll prepare everything. Can you come to my office at 11? That meeting set the tone for the days that followed. My personal life had imploded, but I focused on the practical steps of dismantling my marriage with surgical precision. Patricia was worth every penny, handling the legal complexities while I concentrated on rebuilding the foundations of my life. Kyle's attempts to contact me grew increasingly desperate. "I made a terrible mistake," read one text. "Jessica meant nothing to me," claimed another. The transparent falsity of that statement only strengthened my resolve. If she had meant nothing, he wouldn't have risked everything. 3 days after my birthday, I returned to our house while Kyle was at work, accompanied by 2 friends and a moving company. I took only what was indisputably mine: my clothes, personal items, family heirlooms, and the furniture I'd owned before our marriage. I left his wedding ring on the nightstand with a note: "Patricia will contact you regarding the rest." My friend Megan had offered her guest room until I found a new place. "Stay as long as you need," she insisted, helping me unpack the fragments of my former life. "I still can't believe Jessica would do this," Megan said as we arranged my clothes. "I mean, I know siblings can be competitive, but this is another level." "Jessica's been trying to win a game only she was playing our entire lives," I replied. "The sad part is, even when she wins, she loses. She's now pregnant with another married man's baby, and Kyle's already showing his true colors." Those colors became even more evident when Kyle discovered I'd moved out. He showed up at Megan's apartment, pounding on the door until her neighbors threatened to call the police. "Sam, please," he begged through the door. "Just talk to me. We can work this out." Megan stood beside me, ready to dial 911. "Should I call the cops?" I shook my head. "He'll leave eventually." And he did, but not before shouting, "This isn't fair. You didn't even give me a chance to explain." Later that night, my phone rang. Jessica's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sam?" Her voice was small, almost childlike. "Can we talk?" "I think we've said everything that needs saying," I replied. "Please," she whispered. "I need my sister." The audacity was breathtaking. "You needed your sister when you decided to sleep with her husband. It's a little late now." "I know what I did was unforgivable," she replied, her voice breaking. "But I'm scared, Sam. I'm pregnant with a married man's baby, and now Kyle won't return my calls either." Despite everything, a tiny part of me ached for her. The little girl who had always needed more attention, more validation, more everything. But that empathy couldn't override the damage she'd done. "What did you expect, Jess? That he'd leave me for you? That you'd ride off into the sunset together?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I guess I didn't think that far ahead. I just wanted what you had." "I always have, and now neither of us has it," I replied. "I hope it was worth it." After hanging up, I sat on Megan's guest bed, allowing myself a moment to feel the full weight of my grief. Not just for my failed marriage, but for the sister relationship that had never been what it should have been. The next day, my parents called. Mom was still in denial, suggesting family counseling as though this were a simple misunderstanding. "Your sister made a mistake, Samantha," she insisted. "But she's family, and she's going to need support with this baby." "Then you support her," I replied. "I'm done being Jessica's safety net." My father surprisingly seemed to understand better. "You're right to be angry, Sam. What they did was wrong. But don't let this poison your whole life." "I'm not planning to, Dad. That's why I'm moving on." A week after my birthday, Kyle's tone changed from pleading to bitter. "You won't even talk to me, but you had time to freeze our joint accounts," he texted. "Real mature, Sam." I forwarded the message to Patricia without responding. Jessica, meanwhile, had apparently informed the other married man about her pregnancy. According to my mother, he denied responsibility and threatened to tell his wife Jessica was lying if she pursued it. "She's all alone in this," Mom lamented during another unwelcome call. "Surely you can find some compassion?" My compassion is currently occupied with healing myself, I replied. 2 weeks after my birthday, I signed a lease on a new apartment. A modern one-bedroom in a part of the city I'd always loved, but Kyle had deemed too trendy. I bought new furniture, painted the walls a color he would have hated, and began creating a space that was entirely mine. Patricia called with updates on the divorce proceedings. Kyle was contesting the division of assets despite the prenuptial agreement he'd signed. It's a delay tactic, she assured me. The prenup is solid. He's just hoping you'll get frustrated and agree to mediation where he can appeal to your emotions. My emotions toward Kyle have become remarkably uncomplicated, I informed her. Proceed as planned. At work, I threw myself into projects, staying late and volunteering for assignments that required my complete focus. My colleagues noticed the change, but respected my privacy. Except for David from the creative department, who left coffee on my desk some mornings with simple notes, hang in there, or their loss. 3 weeks after my birthday, Jessica showed up at my new apartment. I had no idea how she'd found my address. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her normally perfect appearance disheveled. Kyle's been sleeping with someone else, she announced when I opened the door. Some woman from his office. Can you believe it? The irony was so thick I could almost touch it. Yes, Jessica. I can believe that the man who cheated with you would cheat on you. That's generally how it works. I thought we were different, she replied, folding her arms protectively over her still flat stomach. I thought he really loved me. I leaned against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted by the familiar pattern. Jessica makes poor choices, suffers the consequences, then expects everyone to rally around her with sympathy and solutions. What do you want from me, Jess? Comfort? Advice? A place to stay until the next disaster. Her face crumpled. I just want my sister back. I know I don't deserve it, but I miss you, Sam, and I'm really sorry. For a moment, I wavered. Despite everything, this was my sister, my only sibling, my childhood companion. However flawed our relationship had been. I'm not ready to forgive you, I replied finally. Maybe someday, but not now. Right now, I need space to heal. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I understand, but when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. As I watched her walk away, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Anger still, yes, but also a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in our relationship, I was setting the terms. Establishing boundaries that protected me rather than accommodating her. Weeks later, I received divorce papers countersigned by Kyle. Patricia called to confirm he had finally accepted the inevitable and agreed to my terms. It's almost never this clean, she remarked. Usually, there's more fighting, more drama. There's been plenty of drama, I assured her. Just not the legal kind. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the city lights. My phone pinged with a text from David. Some of us are going for drinks tomorrow after work. No pressure, but you're welcome to join. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, thanks. I might do that. It wasn't a commitment to anything. Not to David, not to socializing, not to moving on. Just a small acknowledgement that life continues. That there might be good things ahead I couldn't yet imagine. As I sipped my wine, I realized that while Kyle and Jessica had taken much from me, they hadn't taken everything. I still had my dignity, my strength, my capacity to rebuild. And perhaps most importantly, I had finally broken free from the patterns that had defined my life for too long. The betrayal still hurt. The loss still ached. But beneath that pain, like green shoots after a forest fire, I could feel something new beginning to grow. 1 year after that birthday dinner, the one that changed everything, I stood in my apartment, no longer new, now comfortably mine, and surveyed my reflection. The woman looking back at me was both familiar and strange, like meeting an old friend who has traveled far and returned transformed. The divorce had been finalized 6 months earlier, remarkably smooth in the end. Kyle, perhaps recognizing the futility of fighting the evidence Patricia had compiled, accepted the division of assets outlined in our prenuptial agreement. I kept the investment portfolio I built before our marriage, half the value of our house when it sold, and my retirement accounts intact. He kept his business shares. and his guilt. Jessica's baby, a boy she named Leo, was born 3 months ago. DNA testing confirmed what we already knew. Kyle was not the father. The actual father, a pharmaceutical executive named Richard, eventually left his wife and moved in with my sister after Leo's birth. Whether their relationship would last remained to be seen, but Jessica seemed genuinely committed to motherhood in a way I hadn't expected. My relationship with my sister remained complicated. After months of respecting my request for space, she had sent a handwritten letter that surprised me with its self-awareness. "I've been in therapy," she wrote, "trying to understand why I've spent my life competing with you and taking what's yours. Our parents always made me feel I had to be exceptional to be noticed. While you were loved for simply being steady and reliable, I was jealous of that unconditional acceptance I thought you had. Now I realize neither of us got what we needed from them. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just understanding that I'm trying to break this pattern for Leo's sake." The letter had touched me in unexpected ways. 2 weeks later, I had visited her and the baby. A cautious first step toward whatever our relationship might become. Leo had my father's eyes and Jessica's chin, but thankfully, none of Kyle's features. Holding him, I felt a complex surge of emotions: sadness for what might have been, hope for this innocent new life, and a tentative connection to my sister I hadn't felt in years. "He's beautiful, Jess," I had said, sincerely. "Would you consider being his godmother?" she had asked hesitantly. "I want him to have strong, independent women in his life. Someone like you." I had agreed, surprising myself. Some wounds, it turns out, heal in unexpected ways. My parents had struggled to navigate the aftermath of the betrayal, initially attempting to maintain relationships with both Kyle and me as though we were divorcing due to ordinary incompatibility rather than extraordinary betrayal. After several tense conversations, my father had finally acknowledged the role their favoritism had played in shaping the dynamic between Jessica and me. "We thought Jessica needed more attention because she was more volatile," he admitted during a difficult dinner. "You always seemed so self-sufficient, Sam. We didn't realize we were hurting you by treating you differently." It wasn't a complete reckoning, but it was a start. We were learning, all of us, how to build healthier relationships from the ashes of the old ones. Professionally, I had thrived in the past year, channeling my energy into work and earning a significant promotion. The team I now managed included David, whose friendship had gradually evolved into something more. We were taking things slowly, both of us carrying baggage from previous relationships. But his steadiness and genuine kindness had become a cherished part of my life. Kyle had moved to Denver shortly after our divorce, taking a position with a new company and, according to mutual friends, dating someone new. His departure had been a relief, removing the possibility of awkward encounters around the city. Jessica reported that he rarely asked about Leo, seeming relieved to have no biological connection to the child. As for me, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. The woman who had sat calmly eating birthday cake while her world collapsed had become someone who faced challenges head-on, who valued herself enough to demand honesty and respect, who recognized that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, but essential. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my reflections. David had arrived to accompany me to dinner, a small gathering of friends celebrating my 30th birthday, a deliberate reclaiming of a date that had been tainted by betrayal. "You look beautiful," he replied when I opened the door, his sincerity evident in his warm smile. "Thank you," I replied, accepting both the compliment and the small wrapped package he offered. "You didn't have to bring a gift." "It's nothing extravagant," he assured me. "Just something I thought you'd appreciate." Inside the package was a journal, bound in soft leather. The first page inscribed with a quote: "The most beautiful people are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths." Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. My eyes misted as I ran my fingers over the words. "It's perfect," I told him, and I meant it. As we headed to the restaurant where friends waited, I reflected on the lessons of the past year. Lessons hard-won through pain and betrayal, but invaluable nonetheless. I had learned that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted creates space for what you truly need. That forgiveness isn't an obligation, but a choice, undertaken when and if you're ready. that family ties don't excuse toxic behavior, and blood relationships don't automatically deserve blind loyalty. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by how others treated me, but by how I treated myself. The woman who had once measured her value through others' eyes now recognized her inherent worthiness, independent of external validation. The betrayal that had seemed like an ending had, in fact, been a beginning. Painful, but necessary, like a bone that must be broken to heal properly. Kyle and Jessica's actions had shattered the comfortable illusions I'd maintained about my marriage, my family, and myself. From those fragments, I'd built something stronger, more authentic, and entirely mine. As David and I entered the restaurant, my friends rose to greet me with genuine warmth, their faces lighting up with affection that asked nothing in return. This, I realized, was what family could be. Chosen connections based on mutual respect and care, rather than obligation or habit. "Happy birthday, Sam," they called, raising their glasses in a toast that held no hidden agendas, no cruel surprises. Just a simple celebration of another year lived and lessons learned. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past lifting just a little more. "Thank you all for being here," I replied, taking my seat at the center of the table. A place I now occupied without apology or doubt.